there. Welcome to American Snippets. I am your co-founder, Barb Allen. Here at American Snippets, we talk a lot about purpose, passion, and the American dream. While we often focus on the military, we also make it a point to emphasize that everybody in this country has it within their own power to do whatever it is that they feel called to do to fulfill their own purpose and give back and make an impact on this country and strengthen it and the community around them in numerous creative and exciting ways. Today's guest is somebody who does exactly that. We were so excited to find him when we decided to level up on American Snippets and move forward into our next step. We looked around to find some like-minded people to help us, to collaborate with, to help us do that. And when we came across this company with this guest, we were super excited to be a part of it and to become a part of their community and their purpose as well. Dmitriy Kozlov is the founder of several companies, but the one that I'm speaking about right now at this moment is Influex, where he builds brands, personal brand sites for various people, really incredible people throughout the country. So Dmitriy, thank you very much for being part of our show today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's really
no, our pleasure. Thank you so much for the work you do. Let's get started a little bit. When we first met people in your company, we were just blown away by the professionalism and the expertise and the mission that you all have. Then when we go back more and see where it comes from and what drives you to be where you are, it is such a lesson in resilience and courage and grit and tenacity for so many people. So we're very excited to share it. You were born in Soviet Russia.
Yes.
Yes. And you were 7 years old when your mother, who was a single mother, brought you and your brother and your grandparents over here to America.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yep, we immigrated in 96.
In 96. So, I mean, do you have memories of that time before you came here?
Yeah, I do. And it's actually part of what makes me so grateful to pursue the American dream here and be and have a because I have the opportunity for contrast for what it's like in a totally different environment. So I was born in 89, right before the collapse of the Soviet Union in 91. And then the memories I have there are from the early to mid 90s, where we were very, very poor, but everybody was very poor.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the standard to have, to kind of live in poverty. And at the time, my mom was single, raising us both. And I remember jumping around from apartment to apartment quite a bit. I think it was like every several months or sometimes staying with my grandparents. There's two distinct memories that I have from that time. One was, I remember waiting in the lawn bread line. There were two lines for bread, to get bread. And the lawn, and I'm like, oh, Mom, why don't we wait in the short one? And it was like a small price difference for the short one. That's why everybody's waiting in the long one to get bread. There's these little stands to get bread rather than go to a grocery store. And the other one was begging my mom for a candy bar and realizing, really like after the fact that, and at the time, like really convincing her and then feeling guilty that I convinced her to buy me this candy bar. Because a candy bar is something that like is a special treat that costs a lot of money. So just the memories economically from that time, and it doesn't feel like it didn't feel like we were poor because it was the economic standard to live that with all the other kids and families as well.
It was what you knew.
Yes.
Yeah. So then you come over to America. You lived in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember when you arrived? Do you remember what your first thoughts were, or what it was to assimilate into? I mean, such a bold move to move anywhere, especially to another country, another culture, another way of life. I mean, you were just a little boy then, but do you remember what that was, and when you came to America, what your thoughts were on it?
Yes. Also, I'll share, because I shared the economic contrast in Russia.
Yeah.
When we first got here, we were also very poor by American standards, but we felt by contrast very wealthy. When we first got here, we were on welfare and Section 8 housing and food stamps at first, which we're so grateful for these programs being in place at the time, because they gave my mom a head start, and then she developed a career very quickly and got a full-time job, then became a programmer over through studying at night and studying on her own, and then just started doing relatively well in her career, kind of raising us both. But I remember when we first got here, we had a shower in the apartment that was our shower. You go to the grocery store and like get whatever we want. Like there's like orange juice, which is like a rarity in Russia, and like these other things that seem like absolute standards. And then somebody donated us a box of toys. And like, these are more toys than I've ever seen in my life. This is so cool. So the initial experiences were the things that people would call poverty growing up in America, knowing the contrast that they have to their neighbors. We felt like, oh my God, the world is available to us. This is amazing.
Wow, the power of perception. And it's things that so many of us here take completely and totally for granted. Yes. So, I mean, was that a valuable experience for you to have and carry into your life? I mean, do you still occasionally look back at that, and does it still impact you when you think back on it?
Yeah, very much so. It gave me a lot of drive when I was young, and like drive and humility. And I started doing various like business projects. I think at first when I was like 12 or 13, and just got my first job when I was 13.
What was it? What was that first job?
First job was taking care of dogs at a place called Positively Linda's. They groomed and boarded animals. The way I got the job, I got on my bike and rode around to every place within a 2-mile radius, knocking on doors, seeing who would hire me. And the legal hiring age was 14 where I lived. So nobody would hire me except this one place who apparently they were parents of somebody I went to school with. And they gave me this job picking up after the dogs. I ended up working there for 5 years, taking care of animals. And I was scared to death of dogs at the time. And then through obviously years of working with them, I grew to totally fall in love with dogs and the cats that I was taking care of there.
Crazy. Do you have a dog now?
No.
All right. So you didn't love them that much.
Yeah. It's, right now it's more
of just messing with you.
Choice. Absolutely. Yeah. At some point, I certainly will, I think, when it's family time, but this stage, I wouldn't feel responsible with everything else I've got going on and the travel and all of that to have an animal to care for.
Yep, I know, totally. I totally understand that. I have way too many animals, so I respect that choice there. And I know of what you speak. So your story, I mean, it touches on so many levels of what people across this country are going to be able to relate to, because it seems like when we hop online, there's always something coming up in news feeds or on websites that pretty much touch on several of the experiences that you had in your life. So you're qualified to speak on so many of them, starting from when you were young and in school. I know you talked about having a job, but in the middle of all of that, you had some tough times in school where you dealt with people kind of coming after you, and were you in a gang for a little bit?
Yes. Yeah. So socially adjusting was really difficult, because we were not nearly the only immigrants in our town, but there were the other people who had immigrated over. There were Spanish speaking and Portuguese speaking kind of groups of people in ESL class. So they had their own kind of cliques. And then there were the most of the white kids were like in wealthier middle class families. It was just it's kind of like a little more isolated and had a tough time initially fitting in. So that led to me being bullied quite a bit, and really had a tough time like elementary school, early middle school, to then when I grew up enough in that, the rebellion came through when I was like 12 and 13 of, okay, well, screw this. If all these kids aren't going to like me anyway, I'm going to give them a reason not to like me. And I became a total like punk and gangster and started hanging out with the wrong side of town. But these were kids who accepted me into their world. Now their world was not a safe world. It was pretty much, it was teenage gangs. And even though at the time that got me into a lot of trouble, it also gave me a sense of belonging and a sense of identity. until that flipped on me, and then I ended up getting jumped by that group and then almost killed through that environment as well. Um, and the biggest gift that came out of it for me at the time was that I fell passionately in love with rap music and started doing rap, and that's how I then many years later picked that up again as a spoken word artist. And obviously just through it's all by contrast. It's having those experiences of fear and darkness, and not knowing what to do with myself, especially once that group turned on me, were the things at a very young age that gave me a lot of opportunity to grow, I think, faster than most kids. I kind of say that in many ways I parented myself, because my mom did such a good job of taking care of us in that, but she was working full time. She was at night school. She was just doing everything to take care of me and my brother financially. She wasn't available much in terms of time or emotional support. The blessing for that for me was that I got to develop a lot of that on my own, and I came out just fine. But in many ways, grew a sense of emotional maturity and responsibility, because I was forced to at an age that a lot of my peers hadn't yet developed those kind of perspectives and skills.
Well, it's interesting the way that you even say that. And this is something that we see in people who overcome struggles and reach a level of success. It's that mindset where you just described it as an opportunity to grow and learn, right? But that's a mindset. Other people could look at it and say, it was such an unfair situation. You viewed it. There's one of two ways to look at it, right? This is an opportunity to grow, to push myself, to challenge myself. Whereas plenty of other people in other times, and maybe even yourself for a little period of time, you can think this is so unfair, I'm never going to make it, and just accept that path, right? So you have that decision to make, and you look at it as an opportunity to grow and push yourself. And I know you said you released your own demo album at 14 years old.
Yes, I did. I don't put the music itself, I don't put out there because it was kind of like violent and depressing. And I ended up stopping rap when I was like 15 because I walked away from the whole the groups associated with lifestyle and all of that, and then picked it back up many years later.
In a positive path.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, but I was so, at the time I was like, I like go to school and I would go home and like write and record music, and I would set up a little mini music studio with the money I was saving for my job in my house, and learn how to do a lot of like the recording and editing and all this stuff on my own. It was just really following my passion at a young age.
Nice. So in high school, you have a comment on your website that you in high school just shifted your attitude about life to succeed, which again is a very simple sentence to describe a very complex process and a mindset that you had to develop. What was it? Was there any one thing? Was that immediately after that experience in the gang that prompted you to say, oh no, I'm done with this? And because you didn't just shift your mindset, you did like a complete reversal in mindset. And whereas you were going down one path before, you just completely turned your back on that and took an entirely different path that led you to where you are today. But is there anything that, at any moment where even you doubted that decision to go down? Were you tempted to go back that other path, or what was it that kept you moving forward?
The biggest moment that comes to mind is actually when I felt like the people who I thought were supposed to help me, the authorities, vice principal and all of that, were people that I then saw as people who didn't believe me and who just expected me to fail. And my rebellious nature at the time basically said, well, screw this. I'm better than that. So it's interesting. Maybe if they would have believed in me more, I may not have taken the same path.
Yeah,
because I was living in contrast. I was living in rebellion.
Yeah.
So I remember going home and writing a lyric that was something like, the more y'all try to break me, the stronger I get. And it was, okay, not only are my peers people who I see are trying to break me in a way, but now the authorities as well. So let me just go prove the world wrong. So it was something along those lines. I think I knew I was smart, but I was pretty hooked on this idea of going downhill. And then now that everybody expected me to go downhill, then I was pretty hooked on the idea of ensuring that I would be wildly successful. And I started becoming wildly successful in academics and
Yeah.
in the rest of my life, and started working really hard. And it was really this huge turnaround. The pattern that I was operating under at the time was definitely a lot of rebellion, which has certainly stayed throughout my life. And then over the last several years, as I've been just noticing what my patterns are from my childhood, the things that have driven me to success, through that noticing, I've also been more acutely aware of how that shows up in my life in unhealthy ways. So where rebellion can be healthy and unhealthy, where even like patterns of abandonment from when I was younger, and how that has driven me to create communities and kind of help other people feel less alone, and myself, and putting myself at the center of those communities. How feeling less expressed as a child, because I didn't feel like I had a voice initially, has led me to create things like Influex. Is even the brand is influence plus expression, right? Having all of these, having basically noticing how all the stuff that I'd gone through in my childhood had actually shown up as like the wounds that showed up as art, or as entrepreneurial creations in my adult life. But the recent journey has been learning how to do that without also creating, the damage,
mayhem,
from that kind of from the wounds.
So you just mentioned Influex, and let me touch on that quickly, because that is how we found you. My co-founder, Dave Brown, is friends with Brad Costanza. And when we put out there that we were looking to, upgrade our website and really hit another level, instantly this came up. Coincidentally, Brad had just posted about you on the same day. And then we saw that you do personal brand development for a lot of big name people. I mean, you got Joe Polish, Frank Kern, Jules Schroeder, JJ Virgin. You do a ton of people. So we love that you decided, yes, to take American Snippets on board and do that too. But do you think that part of that purpose, where that comes from, you deciding to do personal brand development, was because of something that you just mentioned, where you felt you didn't have a voice? I mean, does that go back to helping other people find their voice and understanding the lift that can give you, the momentum that can give you, and the ripple effect that can create?
Yeah, I would say that it's almost every project that I've done that's been really important for me, entrepreneurially or otherwise, including Influex, has at the time come from, there's a partial awareness of I'm doing this from a sense of intentional purpose, and a partial just like, this is what's happening. And then I look back on it later and I'm like, whoa, now I totally see how this makes sense in the big picture of my life and why I was driven to do this. So I kind of follow the calling and the impulse, trusting that calling and impulse comes from purpose. And then I look back. So Influex is a perfect example of that, where actually the story of how this was formed, there's a previous story of how we formed Visiontech team, but my partner and I had this design and development agency where we were working with a lot of top brands, some personal brands and some not. And we were looking to solve a problem, which was how do we scale our work? Because we do very complicated retainer-based tech work. And we were like, we did a bunch of these personal brand sites for like Frank Kern and Mike Dillard and JJ Virgin. What if we put out there as a more scalable offer to do personal brand sites for much more of the world and create systems around that? That seems really fun. And then eventually I named it Influex, which is like I was brainstorming on names for a while. And then as I look back, then I was like, okay, influence and expression, so much of my life and what I do is about helping others bring their expression forth.
Yes.
And actually for me, my own expression, bringing my own voice and expression forth, has been my greatest medicine. And I've seen that be for others their greatest medicine as well. As through your greatest expression, not only do you heal and liberate yourself, but you also get to influence others, hence influence and expression. And through your influence, that's how you get to impact others. So what's one of the best things we can do with our resources and skill sets with our company was, okay, let's help people create platforms for greater expression and greater influence. So it all does totally tie back. And at the time, and this is, I think, important for anybody that's really looking to follow their purpose, is there's a a dance of being intentional in defining what that purpose is and ensuring your projects align with it, and sometimes just following the impulse of what wants to work through you. Because if you trust that everything happens for a reason, and you just continue to reflect on how those dots will connect looking backward, then the right things do emerge, even if in the moment they don't always look like the big purpose.
They don't always look like positive occurrences, but they can be if you just kind of stay the course and trust in the process. So you have, I mean, so many aspects to you, and you just touched on a little bit. There's a little backstory. I mean, you have Maverick and your Visiontech team, and you have Vision Village, which is something that you're very purposeful towards too. Do you want to talk a little bit about these events, your Maverick events, and was it Maverick and Maverick Next?
Yep. So Maverick Next is an organization that I co-founded with Yanik Silver, who was a mentor to me in my early 20s. And then we ended up partnering in business on this and other work together. And it really came out of the part of my own need, which was to surround myself with like-minded young entrepreneurs, knowing that a lot of the people around me in my early to mid-20s were either I was blessed to finally surround myself with a network of successful entrepreneurs who were mentors, but the people that were my age were not really driving me forward. So I wanted to cultivate that for myself, and I wanted to serve my peers and the next generation of entrepreneurs with the kind of access and gifts that I feel like I'd been granted to through accessing Yanik's world and others. So Yanik and I co-founded Maverick Next as a mastermind group, essentially, for young entrepreneurs who are 25 and under. It's now under 30, so we've shifted that. So it's under 30 who have 6 or 7 figure businesses. So obviously, like, have done something pretty unique at a young age to cultivate that and give them access to each other, plus a mentor network and kind of unique events and experiences. What it's turned into has been like really a family of these young entrepreneurs that have been, now it's been for almost 5 years, I think, that have been and will continue to grow up together. And you know, the people that maybe the Elon Musks or Richard Bransons or Steve Jobs of the future, in their own way, now have kind of like this network that they're growing up with. That I really see a lot of these young entrepreneurs as being the future global leaders. So it's been a real joy and pleasure to continue to cultivate that group and that network.
So how often does that group meet, officially in your events?
About 3 or 4 times a year, depending on what we're doing that year. So some of them combine with events like Camp Maverick. Like there's upcoming Camp Maverick event is in Austin in mid-May, which is like a really fun event where not only the Maverick Nexters, the young ones, gather, but also Mavericks and other entrepreneurs are invited to come, and they kind of like all play at a campground together. It's like summer camp for adult entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
As well as we run some specific entrepreneur mastermind events. For me, I've now I'm 29 now, and I feel like I've made my big contribution in co-founding the group and running it for years. I've now stepped into an advisor role, and some of the members have taken on leadership roles in running it. I mean, I've felt more and more called to more of a singular focus in my businesses versus trying to do so many things at once.
Yeah, you have to narrow that focus. You can't spread yourself out, because then you just start doing everything kind of half-baked instead of applying the way it is. So, and that's also encouraging to hear, because so often people can confuse the need to succeed with meaning that you have to kind of compete with others and squat. Like, if somebody else is succeeding, you can't also succeed, right? So when you instill in them or nurture in them maybe an existing mindset that by helping each other succeed, you grow your own success, that's an attitude that spills out into the rest of their lives too, right? So even outside of that particular mastermind meeting or that particular event, if they're carrying that mindset forward and benefiting from it and living it and seeing the value in it, do you think they then go home and perhaps, kind of spread that out into their own reach, into their own community too, or maybe even unofficially outside of that mastermind? They're just translating that mindset to others and growing that mindset. And that's all something that originated from you. So it's got to feel pretty awesome to know that ripple effect.
Real blessing to have an impact on this group, because they're my peers, and some of them, even at certain points, have been more successful in their primary companies. And it's been really cool to be able to serve them in their paths. And yes, that definitely happens, where I've had one member said something like, she said that when she came to Maverick Next, her expectation was that she's going to learn how to grow her business. And a lot of what she got was that she got more aligned with her purpose, more aligned with her values, both in her company and personally, and learn how to operate in a way that has a bigger impact. And through that, she actually ended up tripling her income and growing her business. And I love hearing things like that, because that's a lot of what the culture has been about. It's about getting in more alignment, which I think is vitally important for any entrepreneur. But the earlier at a young age somebody can find that, the sooner they can have their biggest impact in the world. And that focus actually usually attracts a lot more money, especially a lot more sustainable as well, which I think is true for all people. If you find alignment with your purpose and what you care about and what you want to give to the world, then the world provides you with the resources to do that. So you end up becoming more financially abundant.
That is a difficult lesson for people to absorb, and it can take a long time. It's a leap of faith. You cannot see that in front of you. So it's hard to believe that is actually the way it happens, right? Because it seems like the surer bet is to maybe stick with that fixed paycheck that is coming, and in the job that maybe doesn't fulfill you, maybe you even dread, but you're going to take that because it's nerve wracking to go out on that unknown area and strike out in that unknown path. But you really do have to, and especially when things don't happen right away, when they kind of crush you down a little bit and you have those dark hours and you're thinking, why should I do this? This isn't working. And the tendency can be to turn back and revert to that safe paycheck, right? But when you don't, and when you follow your purpose, is something that comes up often in your website and in your conversation, and certainly in what we do too. Some people, it's a simple word, but it has a strong impact, a strong message, right? I mean, you have purpose-inspired marketing. That was your business plan, and everything you do is centered on purpose. And when people have that belief in something they feel so strongly about, it's so much easier to stay motivated and keep going. You had one thing that I really love, this phrase that I saw that you had out there. You talked about a trip to Peru, and you mentioned that it was your purpose accelerator. And I loved that. That jumped out at me. Like, what a perfect way to put that. These events in your life that are sort of a catalyst for you to go forward. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip and what it was about you, about that sort of jump started you?
So the trip was called Entrepreneur's Awakening. It was a 10-day trip to Peru, partial medicine journey and partial mastermind with 10 other entrepreneurs. So when I say medicine journey, I mean, it was 2 ayahuasca ceremonies and a St. Pedro ceremony. So we sat down with a shaman there, and it was a lot of preparation work in advance, deep work while we were there, and then integration work afterwards. I always say for people exploring plant medicines, there's certainly a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Or maybe not a wrong way, but a way that probably won't get you what you're looking for and can be a little risky, versus with the right experience architected, then it can be something that's truly transformational. And for me, that trip, what I went in there with, some people go into ayahuasca as like, hey, I'm looking to find my purpose. That's a pretty common intention of people's first time experiences, or get closer in touch with it. For me, I was very clear on my purpose at the time. And I was looking for, how do I accelerate this in the world? How do I accelerate the manifestation of this purpose in the world? And in my life and how I show up. So I thought, I would go in there with, I don't know what my expectations were, but I know that the biggest things that I got out of it was actually having the opportunity to dive back into my childhood and my patterns, my relationship with my mom and my relationship with my dad, and like operate in the dream world of my mind and spirit with all of these things that were, if I don't address them directly, were going to continue to be repeating patterns in my life that would create a level of success and a level of suffering. And through diving back into those and working to resolve unresolved conflicts and tensions within myself, it gave me the freedom and it liberated me to show up with more love in the world through diving into the shadow and darkness and the areas where I felt limited or not enough in some way, or felt unloved, and through diving into all of those, uncovering them, noticing them, being willing to sit in those, and then resolving them, it made me so much lighter when I came out of truth. And the drive that I had afterwards, it's like I had a lot of drive before. The drive that I had afterwards was kind of, I would put it as healthier. And I think that we often create, like, our wounds are beautiful things because our wounds can be places where the light shines through, right? Like they oftentimes stimulate our greatest creations. And I, most creators will reflect on that as say, yeah, wow, this wound that I had at some point is what drove me to create this really great thing in the world. And at the same time, there's also an unhealthy version of operating from our wounds, because when something is at the source of something, it'll often be recreated in that thing if we don't notice that. So this gave me the opportunity to also start to switch some of my motivational gears in creating things, even if they may have been sourced from my wounds, to ensure that I don't then still need that source of motivation to that same kind of motivation. So if it took me feeling deeply alone to create something like Maverick Next, to ensure that whatever it is that I create next out of Maverick Next doesn't require me feeling deeply alone.
Wounded, yeah.
Come from a more expansive place. So it gave me the opportunity to shift motivational gears to be from a more positive and less painful place, which obviously expands my ability to create far beyond what my pain is.
So do you come across people, or do you have conversations with people who are skeptics to that kind of mindset and that way of life? Because you'll find people who are the head of giant corporations, multi-billion dollar, and they feel like there's no room in business for compassion or mercy or happiness. And they just go, drive. You have to put in 14, 15-hour days to be successful. And they may look at your model as unsustainable or impractical. I mean, have you met people like that, or just in general conversation? And how does that go? Do you engage in the conversation with them, or do you just kind of let it go and go back to your?
Yeah. What I would say, and it's like there's have certainly been times. I have my own patterns of that, which is I have to work super hard to be successful. I had a belief that I actually worked on in my ayahuasca journey and since, which is if I don't move fast and work hard, I won't be okay. Like life will fall apart. And it's still something that I'm like dancing with, right? To create more an easy, lucrative, and fun life and business. So what, as far as engaging with people with that mindset, I have a lot of compassion for them because I know where that comes from, especially when people have created their success based on that. And ultimately, it's just going back to like, what do you want your life to look like, and what do you want? Why are you playing the game of business at a high level? Yeah. What's the why? And usually people forget at that level if they're there and they're in that daily grind, and they think that they have to be in that way of thinking their whole lives. Especially, I don't have a problem with hard work, but the times when it's like, all it's so competitive that there's no compassion. It's like, hey, what do you're cultivating power. What are you going to do with that power? What do you want the world to look like?
Yeah.
And I think that's so important in business and in politics, and any time that a human being is dedicating a significant portion of their life and resources to gaining power, to gaining influence, then
For what
it's
purpose?
important to stay in relationship with what are you going to do with that power and influence, both for your own life in terms of how much time you have to enjoy yourself, to be with your family, to do the things you love, and what are you going to do for the outside world, and how are you going to show up? And those two are actually both pretty close in relationship, because if a person is building their own business and living their life in a way that doesn't make them happy, even though it makes them externally successful,
Right.
chances are they will project that, because as we then sort it out, right? Chances are they will project into their creations in the world that ends up recreating that pain for others, because our beliefs go into our work, what we do.
Absolutely. So where are you now in terms of your professional life, and what are your next visions for that profession? I mean, you're young, man. You've achieved the level of success that a lot of people my age, I could be your mother, right? I'm much older than you, but you've achieved a level of success that a lot of people will never achieve, or maybe will be seeking well into their later years. So where do you take that from here? What are your next plans? What's your next vision? And, what are your thoughts on how you're going to go about that?
Yeah, thank you. I'll first just I'll comment on the what other people may think as far as my level of success versus theirs, and I think because I get caught in the comparison game often myself as well, especially being around a lot of wildly successful people.
You'll never stop. Yeah, they'll always. Oh, you could be any level of successful. You will always compare yourself. Yeah.
So I think the important thing for people to look at there is that if we follow our own sense of purpose and dharma and calling, there's really no comparison in levels of success. There's only, am I on my path?
Right.
And that's an individual relationship for everybody. So I think it's important for people listening to really look at that, and it's like, whether they're more successful than me, less successful than me, whatever, in terms of like the external measurements of success. To me, true success is how fully am I following my own path in a way that makes me happy, so that when I look back on my deathbed on the things I've done,
right,
or less regrets, because the greatest regrets are usually the things that we didn't do, in terms of following our own path versus living with the expectations of others, including others that we will never meet or see.
Right.
So wanted to say that first, and then as far as my own path of what's next for me, I'm in a really special and unique place where everything has been converging.
Mm-hmm.
As I've been focusing on right now, the main focus has been Influex, because I truly believe that through that we both have opportunity to scale to a much larger reach. And the most exciting thing is that through working with influencers, I feel like we get to have a greater impact through every influencer we work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Like through creating your website, American Snippets, there's an impact that we get to directly or indirectly have on every person that you reach.
Yep.
Which is really exciting.
100%. Yeah.
And I feel that for every influencer we work with, who they all have some sort of positive message to the world in their own way. Right. And the greater we help their expression and influence, the more people we reach, even if it's not directly our voice in that case. So that's been really fun. And I will continue to do the custom sites. And then part of the vision is creating more of a platform eventually as well, where people can go on Influex as a platform and create their own through a drag and drop editor of how to build their own personal brand sites, really. Awesome. Using all the principles. When I say things have been converging for me, though. It's my poetic self has been stepping into business more
Mm-hmm.
in artistic expression. So I've been getting in front of mastermind rooms and doing my spoken word poetry, and not only has it been fun and fulfilling, it then leads to business connections. So it's been really cool for me thinking, okay, one of the most profitable things I can do is just keep doing poetry, whether
Yeah.
it's on stage or on Facebook or wherever it is. Um, and it's tied the artist and the entrepreneur in me to one path. So my word for the year
Yeah.
is expression. Is the more fully I express myself, the more abundance I can cultivate in my life. So everything right now is my fullest expression will be the best service in all of my companies and businesses.
Yeah. And even when you talk about that, you can see you light up a little even more, because you could tell it's something that's very important to you. And it's you say it so simply, but so many people struggle with doing exactly that, just living. And the level of success is not a banking account. It's living that life that makes you feel fulfilled and complete and in a meaningful way. And the fact that you're doing that now is just awesome, especially considering the choices you had to make to get there, where so many people could have gone the wrong way. What would be some advice you have for, maybe there's a lot of kids this day, teenagers now in particular, can hop on the news again and see a lot of conflicted teens. There's a lot of anger, a lot of dissent in the country. And, what would you say to somebody, somebody younger or in high school or even younger who's going through a situation that is patently unfair, right? Or just may seem insurmountable at that age, whether they're in that gang or they're headed into a life of crime. Maybe they've, sorry, I'm going to click this out. Maybe they've, already run into trouble with the law or whatnot. And maybe they feel like it's just avalanched already, where they're just already giving up on their lives or ever overcoming that. What would your advice to them be?
Yes. Use the pain as fuel to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Nice.
And to elaborate on that a tiny bit more, it's okay to feel the pain and anger, abandonment, whatever it might be, right? It's okay to feel those things and to want to channel those things into rebellious behavior.
Yeah.
Just seek to do so in a way that creates the world you want around yourself. And you'll notice that if you channel that anger and pain in a way that you're not conscious of the world you're creating through that, you'll actually create more anger and pain for others and for yourself, because you're saying, I have all this pain. I want others to feel my pain.
Yes.
I want others to feel my anger. So I'm going to go do harm and damage, because harm and damage was done to me and it was unfair. And I want to make things fair. You want to make things fair by having others feel your pain, because that feels fair then. And instead, and knowing that, okay, yes, like that's totally understandable why somebody's emotional system would think that way. And there's also an opportunity to say, wow, I feel all this anger and pain, and I don't want firstly, I don't want to feel like this for the rest of my life. And secondly, I don't want other people, other kids my age, other kids growing up, other people to feel what I'm feeling and to go through what I've gone through. And the way that I can ensure of that is by taking all of this anger and pain and channeling it into choices and behavior that create the change I want to see. And that just sets you off on a whole different path, as far as the books you read, as far as how you treat people with greater kindness, as far as what you do with your life. All of those things can vary, right? All of those things are totally up to you. The actual choices are up to you. Use that as the filter. Is how can I take the pain and turn it into purpose?
Yep.
Who do I want to be, and what kind of world do I want to see, and how can I participate in the creation of that world versus versus a creation of a world where my pain just gets replicated and duplicated over and over.
Yeah. And your life is a testament to that. So it's not just, you're not just saying those words, you've actually lived them. And so I'm hoping people listening, understand that and give it that value added that comes from your experience. So we're going to wrap up with a couple other questions that we like to ask our people, because it's always so interesting to hear. hear your responses, and especially from you, because you remember life in another country, right? Part of the American Snippets, like I had mentioned earlier, we talk a lot about the American dream because it seems like there's also almost an attempt by some people in this country to make sure everybody believes the American dream is dead. It doesn't exist or it never existed. But also everybody has their own definition of the American dream, what it means to them. So what does that mean to you? If somebody says to you, are you following your American dream? You know, what would that mean to you?
Living a life of freedom, which means to me being able to live on my own terms and express my gifts as fully as I can. That's certainly not possible in every area of the world, and it's certainly possible in America.
Yeah. So if there is somebody that you could call up today, right now, hop on the phone and meet this afternoon and spend an afternoon with and talk to and learn from, somebody you haven't met before, who would that be and why?
Macklemore comes to mind.
Yeah.
Macklemore is he's a rapper who started out as a spoken word artist, and most of his music is quite conscious, while still reaching the masses, which really impresses me. So right now, that's who first comes to mind in Macklemore.
Fun. It's always so much fun to ask that question. And normally we ask this one question. I'm going to twist it a little because normally we ask people, what would you reach back and say to your 22-year-old self? You're not so far from that 22-year-old self. So I'm going to ask you to look into your future now and say to you, what would you like to have held on to? What's something you like when you look at yourself as 40 years old? What would you like to carry into that? What would you say to yourself at 40 years old? Do you think advice that you'll need a reminder of or something to go do or say?
Never stop growing and evolving. You know, don't get complacent with whatever level of external or internal success you reach. That it's all about the evolution and the growth, and also to enjoy. Just keep enjoying. That the youth is not in age and number of years, but in how you show up to life and how you play.
Yeah, I feel like that's something you're going to just do without needing to remind yourself of, but that's good. So we'll track you down when you're 40 and play that back for you.
Awesome.
And remind you. So if there is some place that people can go to find out more about you and what you do, because you're into so many things, the spoken word art and all of that. I mean, is there a site you want to send them to refer them to that they can go find out more about you and join one of your communities or support some of your work? Because, you know what? I almost forgot too. I said this was last, but let's talk quick about your Vision Village, right?
Yes.
That is something
So that was really exciting because that's something you participated in through getting.
Yes. Yeah. I can't believe I almost forgot that.
Yes. I truly believe in making it impactful directly and indirectly with all of the work that we do in business. I think business is one of the greatest opportunities to have an impact in the world. So with the Vision Village project, specifically, we partnered with a group called Village Enterprise, which builds entrepreneurial training villages out in East Africa. It takes a lot of things we've been talking about in terms of just empowering people, sometimes in the worst situations, to take life into their own hands and build businesses through bringing the education over there. And a lot of their businesses, they're basic, human needs based businesses, water delivery or medicines or building bikes and stuff like that. And basically we found out, this is through the Maverick organization, that $25,000 gets a village built, which means 50 micro enterprises trained, small businesses, 150 entrepreneurs total trained, and that lifts a community of 1,000 plus people out of extreme poverty, which the ripple effect of that just keeps going on and on in terms of the
absolutely
impact of that. So we figured, okay, let's do a campaign where we build 25 sites at once, make it a low enough price point that it's ensure that basically we can sell these within a month, and donate a portion of those funds, where basically for every site sold, we said, okay, for every site sold out of 25 sites, we'll donate $500. And then once we hit the 25 sites, then we'll match that donation of another 500 per site. So it was really cool. We got to write a $25,000 check last August to build this Vision Village with Village Enterprise. We called it Vision Village because the name of our company, overarching company over Influex, was Visiontech Team, and I love alliteration. So Vision Village came out of that. And I've got to catch up with them on the details, but yeah, essentially it created this village there, lifts 1,000 plus people out of extreme poverty through the power of entrepreneurship. And I know that the impact that's had on my own life, and that, you know, America as a country runs on the fuel of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
That's where all the innovation and freedom truly comes from. So bringing that essence to the sometimes the most challenging, desolate parts of the world, and showing the kind of impact that it can have there is really proof that, you know, it's not just about our external circumstances and limitations, but it's about with the right education, with the right choices, what can be done in any community through the power of taking life into your own hands and entrepreneurship.
Awesome. So once again, then, where is the site where people can go to learn more about your companies or your work, or follow you as an artist and what you do?
Yes. Best thing to follow me, firstly, I've been posting a lot lately on Facebook. So if you could include a link below this to my personal Facebook profile and my personal site. I'm not going to, I'll spell my name out here for anybody listening, but then it'll be easiest to just go to the link.
Click the link, yes.
Yeah, Dmitriy Kozlov, it's DmitriYKozlov.com. And then if you're interested in exploring a personal brand site for yourself, that's Influex, INFLUEX.com. And we actually just bought the domain influencersites.com. So that's kind of an easy to redirect for us. Really, if you're listening to this and you're not called to engage in a business level, but just kind of want to follow a lot of what I'm up to, like the stuff I share on Facebook has a wide variety, anything from like art and poetry to a lot of my beliefs around life and business. That's the best way to connect. Just go follow me on there and reach out, and would definitely love to keep impacting. If there's anything in this conversation that made a difference for you, I would love to keep sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all you do and for being a part of our show today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barbara. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, it was.